Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome back to Deep Dive. So, just found out that OBS didn't record any of the screen share for the last two videos. Or I guess the last three videos. So that's nice and fun. That'll be fun to figure out. But anyway, the last video we're going to be talking about is testing. So, this is the last part of the idiot method for designing, for kind of going through any kind of code change or any kind of feature that you're implementing. And so here I just want to kind of talk about, and I'll just kind of state once again, I've got videos on this, on how to kind of test your change, how to go through the refactoring process, and how to make unit tests. Not to mention, I will be showing you how to make how to unit test your code and adapt it to your projects in the future. But one thing to kind of talk about here is just where this kind of lines up. So, at this point in the process, we should assume that our optimization and refactoring are near completion, but maybe we're still waiting on input from other teammates on the team, but we've already kind of gone a few rounds of review from other teammates, or maybe we're at the very beginning of rounds of review if we have the time, but we are kind of going through and making and validating our code in multiple ways. So, and I will say this, right? It just also kind of depends on the type of development that you do. So if you do test driven development, your testing will actually go along with your implementation. So it kind of turns like the IDTO kind of, but if you're kind of like me, I pile all my tests on at the end, but I do make sure that all my endpoints are covered while I'm writing up all my unit tests during this phase. So it is just important to kind of be comprehensive, make sure that you have good code coverage, and make sure that you're testing all the features of your deliverable. And I kind of like it. It helps me go through and make sure that to go through my code with a kind of fine brush comb, a fine tune comb. I don't know. It helps me just go through the code with a little bit more rigor when I have to go back and write a unit test for all the functions and get that code coverage up as high as possible. So, but yeah, this is wherever phase that you do it in, whether or not you're waiting on feedback from people or you do it very early on, like right after your implementation, we just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence here and making sure our code is valid and running as we expect it. So make sure that it's giving you the outputs that you expect, and make sure that you can, it's extensible. And honestly, just make sure that it does what you want it to do. If you are a good code base, you should have a lot of unit tests. So make sure that all the unit tests are passing and they agree with the new feature that you created. Ideally, you'll have your unit test connected to your PR process. And when every time the PR updates, it will run all the unit tests against your new code and make sure everything is validating. And it won't let you check in unless all the tests are passing. So, just make sure that you have been due diligent and you're not writing flaky tests. Make sure that you're writing tests that test the business logic and the functions, rather than testing that the code gives you a certain input all the time. Like, that's not always going to be the case, but just make sure that when given a certain input, it gives you an expected output. Like I say, I'll do videos on kind of test procedures. I'm not going to go into all of that here, but just wanted to make sure that we do always allocate just a little bit of time to do testing. Now, there's also multiple forms of testing. There's unit testing, integration testing, and end-to-end testing. I once again covered that in other videos, but with your unit testings, you're making sure that your code has good code coverage, pretty much. You're just making sure that you test all the endpoints within your code. All the functions have been tested as best as they can. With integration testing, we are kind of in the middle, but we can maybe make some assumptions in the code we can make some assumptions, like we can go through the process of generating API tokens with a magic process, and then calling certain endpoints and making sure that they give us the value back. So we want to make sure that integration test and unit test have been coded into our project. And then the third one is the end-to-end test, where we start up the service, right? We start it from scratch, and we just start to hit endpoints as a user might hit those endpoints, and we want to make sure that those are all done. So we want to make sure that everything is covered here. So unit integration end to end. Highly encourage you to go look those up if you've never heard of those concepts, but we want to make sure that all bases have been covered and that we have added some test of each kind to the code base if necessary. In some cases, you don't need to add end-to-end test, or it's very hard to automate the end-to-end test, and so you do those manually. So we just want to make sure that we note all that stuff down so that people can come behind us and test our code and figure out how to use it. And this is another point too. I haven't written this out explicitly in this whole protocol that I've created, but also think about documentation in this phase. Think about whether or not you want to document all the work that you've done, especially how to use it and how to integrate with it, considerations for using it, what are the limitations of it. And it can be a good way to consolidate your design doc into just like plain English. So your design doc had all the reasonings for implementing things this way, and so your documentation can say, hey, we decided to implement it with this technology because of these reasons, yada yada yada, and these are the limitations, and then and that can be pretty much it. Here's an example of how to run it, right? So think about that. It doesn't have to be something super official too. So if you don't have a lot of documentation on the team, and maybe you just start a OneNote where you write all this stuff down and you share it with everybody so that they know how to use your feature. So that's one thing. So testing is very much, to me, this like cleanup phase. It's the phase right before we are completely done with the project, but it is nonetheless very essential. It shouldn't take a lot of time, but it's just helping us do the last bit of due diligence to make sure that we have proper code that will last, that will stand the test of time. So we just go through, make sure that we are testing things that we actually care about, that make sure that the feature is running as we expect it to be running, which honestly makes you want to almost move it above the optimization. But I think that sometimes optimization or refactoring can change the functionality of our code. So we kind of have to be careful and make sure that our tests are fully up to date with the latest version of the code, and that they are in sync with the very last iteration of our code that we submit to the repo. So yeah, but yeah, like I say, I have videos on testing and how to do them. This phase to me doesn't take an especially long time. It's the last, it's kind of your final goodbyes, is getting that code coverage up and getting all those unit tests out. But yeah, it's once again an extremely, extremely important part of the process. So with that, we have covered the entire idiot method. This is a framework that I have built, so it has worked really well for me, both personally and professionally. But I would love to hear what opinions are on people that use this. I know that sometimes in a professional environment, this process can actually take a bit longer. It can look like it takes longer, and it can look like you're taking longer to do your deliverables if you're more used to jumping into the implementation and doing things like pretty quickly and making a lot of decisions on your own. This forces you to slow down quite a bit. And so, yeah, in certain situations like a startup, it might not really work, but I would push back and say that it probably will work, especially if you are someone that is making a lot of decisions on your own, because even though you're going to have to slow down and do the additional work of investigating or designing something out, you are going to get to go on full autopilot during the implementation phase and the optimization and even the testing. So you might have had to have been just a little bit more active and aware when you were going through the implementation phase, because you were making all these decisions on the spot. Whereas now you can kind of go into robo mode and plow through your code much more quickly, or just much more effortlessly. So, maybe it doesn't save you time, but it can save you energy and allow you to be able to mentally switch context to other things a little bit more easily, and pick up where you left off, because you have this design already written out. And so when you come back to it the next day, you just pick up where you left off in the design. Whereas if you're figuring everything out on the spot, you're going to have to make sure that you have detailed notes so that you can pick up the next day and kind of have all the context that you had the previous day, which you probably won't. You'll probably get distracted, and someone will make you forget what you're doing. And it's very easy. It's very easy to lose the flow to get to the end of a project especially if you start to hit any holes. So, having a design at the very beginning of a project is very nice, because if you hit a hole, you can go back to that design and discuss among others. Whereas if you never had a design and you hit a hole, well, now you're like, I wish I had a design to kind of discuss about and iterate, because now I have this hole and I can't figure it out. I can't figure out an easy solution to it. So, I guess I'm not gonna, either you have to go make that design doc, or you have to go figure out a solution spur of the moment. And many people don't like to just be brought in to figure out spur of the moment solutions with you. So make the design, go through the process, try it out, and let me know how it does for you. Yeah, but that is the end of this series. So I did have some video issues. I need to go fix those. But yeah, this is the end of the Idiot Method series. So hope that we can, like I said, I would love to hear people's opinions of the process and the framework and how it works for them. And I will be doing videos on my channel just explicitly showing you how I work through this entire process. But yeah, more than anything, just kind of have fun doing what you're doing. It's not meant to be a super restrictive method, so it's very free form. And as you saw kind of in my investigation video, I kind of take a lot of different approaches with how I might go about writing my notes and even presenting those notes to other people. So just do what works for you, and take it from there. So with that is the end of the video, and I will catch you back for another new series, or maybe I'll catch you at a coding day. Who knows? But that is all for now. Bye.